Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Okay, just making sure technology is okay. Thank you for everyone to come in both planes, incarnate and discarnates. We are going to bring some highlights from the book Sublime Expiation or Sublime Expiation. It was the original language is in Portuguese. And it was to the mediumship of Divaldo Franco. It was written in 1973. And the spirit author is Victor Hugo. So we are going to try to translate the richness of this book, not only the ideas and the concepts, but the way it was writing, because it's so beautiful, very romantic, by the way, that we don't have the words to express it. So we were going to try to be to the same height of the author. Also, because of the topic that we are going to see very soon, the topic of the book is going to bring a lot of therapy for us. So let us take a position in which we are going to start a therapy session for our souls, for our spirits. Okay? So let us start. I'm happy. So Victor Hugo, just to remember, was a French writer. He lived from 1802 to 1885. Most of the people knows Victor Hugo because of the nowadays Broadway play Les Miserables. I don't know. I'm not good with English, but I mean French, but we're trying. However, one of the skills of Victor Hugo in his time, he was considered in his time the best French writer at the moment for two main characteristics. The first one, he had the skill to manipulate the French language in perfect harmony. The rhythm of his poetry, the measure, the style in his prose, it was perfect. The mechanics, the use of the vocabulary, everything was perfect according with the scholars of his time. However, he developed another skill. He not only wrote for scholars or high educated people of his time, he wrote for everyone. So even an educated person that somebody was reading the books of Victor Hugo had the capacity to understand and to connect. Why? Because he knew very deeply the human soul. So with his words, he described not only landscapes and places, but when he created the characters, he described the characters, the inner characteristics of the characters, the emotional and psychological characteristics. So it is easy to connect with these descriptions. So this is about Victor Hugo, and he is the spirit author of the book Sublime Expiation. Okay? The main topic of the book, it is about Hansen disease. In other words, leprosy, which is a chronic infection disease that affects the skin, the peripheral nerves that are outside the brain and the spinal cord, and the mucous membranes of the nose, throat, and eyes. It is caused by the leprosy bacillus, Mycobacterium leprae, and this is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. So leprosy or Hansen disease has a long history. It's basically, since human beings, we are on planet Earth, also the Hansen disease is with us. There are accounts for all antique Egypt in which this describes the disease, and in all different cultures around the world, it is a common reaction to the disease or the illness, and it is rejection. Since biblical times, It has rejection from society. You are dirty, you are unclean, you're not sacred, and you need to get out of our community, because at the time they believed it was contagious. Leprosy or Hansen disease is only contagious if you spend a very long period of time of constant interaction with the patient, then you get the disease. But a casual visit or something like that, it is not contagious. Current days, in 2018, it is a very rare cases in the United States. There are still some in South America, especially in Brazil. There are colonies for people with the disease, and in some islands in the Pacific still, but it's controlled more or less. However, the rejection, the taboo continues. Because what happens is, if it's not treated on time, it basically defigurates the person through a very painful process of decomposition, until at some point the disease sometimes just stops naturally, or people in Jesus' times just simply pass it away with the pain of the decomposing of the physical body and the pain of the decomposing of the emotional or psychic body. Because it's not easy to take the rejection of your loved ones, or your wife, or your husband, or your siblings, saying, I don't like you anymore, you're dead for us. So it is a disease that takes in both the physical and the psychological and emotional bodies. And we have here an excerpt from Luke chapter 5, 12 to 13. So the leper approached Jesus and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. Nobody touched a leper. Nobody. He did. I am willing, he said. Be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him. So with this in mind, we are going to start the story of Lucien. This is in around the 40s in Brazil. They give the characters different names because some of the characters are still incarnate, and so people, they know them. They're currently among us. But this is a real story. This is a real account that is going to take us to the journey of what is that of sublime expiation, what Victor Hugo is trying to tell us with that sentence. So this is starting in Brazil. The name of the cities are made up by the author, so it's not really of importance, and it's around the 40s and the 50s. So we are going to start presenting the characters of our story. I don't know where is the pointer. So we start with Lucien. Oh, is here? No. So Lucien is the 13th son of Dr. Euclides Medeiros and Mrs. Angelina. Thank you. So how do I point? With this one? Lucien. Here is Lucien, the 13th son of Dr. Euclides Medeiros and Mrs. Angelina. Well-accommodated family, high class. It seems like they were living in the capital of the country. And all of the kids, the children, they receive a very high education. Lucien was a very handsome young guy. He has skills for the piano, the music. He composed, he wrote. He was an eminence. And he was having a happy life. Then we have Miriam Vasconcelos and Armando. So Armando and Lucien, when they were teenagers, they discovered the Spirit Center in their city. And they decide to attend the Spirit Center, and they went to the youth program, and they fall in love with the concepts of Spiritism. So they became very active, and for them, for both of them, Lucien and Armando, it was very natural to embrace the knowledge, the concepts, the Spiritist codification. And they were avid readers, so they read it and they start acquiring good knowledge. And Miriam Vasconcelos was their teacher in the Spiritist Center. She also was an ostensible medium, very dedicated to the Spiritist Center, but also very dedicated to charity. And one of her favorite charities, it was visiting a colony in which they seclude people with the Hansen's disease. So she went there, and part of her work was visiting the colony with a team of Spiritist friends, and they start building in this specific colony a pavilion in the hospital that is going to be dedicated to provide psychological and emotional support to the patients there. So we have Miriam, the teacher, Lucien, our pianist, and Armando. Once he became an adult, Armando also had a skill, a gift, and he has the gift of talking, of the speech. So what he decided is to start giving presentations all across the country. And Lucien and Armando, they dream both that they will spread the Spiritist teaching not only in Brazil, but all around the world. And they dream like Lucien, he will bring his piano and play beautiful music to inspire the people. And Armando was dreaming to give these presentations and talk all about the Spiritist codification, Allan Kardec, Jesus' Gospel, etc., etc. They were very energetic about it, and they truly embraced the doctrine with love and passion. Dr. Euricles Madeiros and Mrs. Angelina, they didn't have any interest in what about the Spiritist education that their son was receiving. They thought it's part of being young. This shall pass, but they didn't get engaged. However, Lucien, he started going up in his pianist career, and then he was selected for the international Chopin contest that was held in Europe. So actually, Lucien was representing Brazil. He went to Europe, and actually he won the contest. However, at this point in our story, there is something that is going on with Lucien. He is not feeling well. He is feeling weak. He sweats at night. He thinks it's all the stress because of his career, but he feels that it's something else. When he went to the contest in Europe, he played the piano beautifully, but he had certain difficulty to move his hand articulations. So he was concerned. It was his career. So we will be concerned as well. Once he returned to Brazil, he told the parents, and the father is, my son, I'm going to get the best doctors of the country for you. So they start this journey of going from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor, a lot of tests. Nobody can tell what is going on with Lucien until these purple spots start appearing in his body, especially his limbs. So people were thinking it's purpura, it's some other thing. They finally found in a certain city a doctor, very famous for giving diagnoses that were impossible to discover. So they take Lucien there to the city, and Lucien is just stepping into the doctor's office when the doctor, with a very cold heart, say, this boy is a leper. So in that moment, Lucien, who was an artist, he felt like somebody put a knife in his stomach. Just by listening to the diagnosis, he felt he died in that moment. And the mother that suffered for certain nervous situation, she got all stressed, and she was, no, doctor, not in our family, no. We are going to do some tests. You are going to run tests, and we are going to have a different diagnosis. And everybody was in the same page. Lucien went to very difficult tests. After a week or so, the diagnosis was confirmed. So they go back to their home city, but Lucien was in shock. In such shock, he went to a very deep depression. He couldn't think straight. He was completely lost. He felt it was a death sentence. And at the time, it was certainly a death sentence. The family, they were all stressed. They were thinking how to hide Lucien from the public, how to hide him so he doesn't bring dishonor to the family. He doesn't bring gossiping around the family. They were concerned about the pride of the Madeiros family, but they weren't concerned about their child. How is he feeling? We're talking about a 19-year-old boy, 19, 20-year-old boy. So at that time, our venerable Miriam Vasconcelos, she knew the news. She got to know. And during the time that Armando Lucien were attending the center, for Miriam, Lucien always had a special place in her heart. So she said, I'm going to see Lucien. She went to visit. The boy was in such a distressed condition that she suggests the parents, he needs psychiatric assistance. And the parents were like, you take him to the hospital. So Miriam do that, take Lucien to the psychiatric hospital. He was immediately taken. And the doctors decide that Lucien, because of his very bad condition, emotionally and physically, he needs to stay there for about 3 months or so. For the families, the family was a relief because they don't have to deal with the situation. For Miriam, it was very painful to see one of her boys going through all of this. So one of the things that Miriam decided to do is she went to a doctor that was a friend of her and asked him to give her a diagnosis. In that way, she could be a patient in the psychiatric hospital. We're talking about the 40s, okay? So it was a matter of writing. She took that paper to the hospital and she hospitalized herself. So during those 3 months, Miriam was with Lucien. She was by her bedside day and night, reading the gospel to him, although it seems he couldn't hear her. He was out completely, you know. After 3 months, he's more recovered, emotionally speaking, psychologically speaking. However, the Hansen disease is advancing very quickly. His fingers and his toes already have this purple color, so the doctor decided that it's necessary for him to go to the leprosy colony. In order to do that, they need to take Lucien from the psychiatric hospital, stay for a week or so at home, because it takes paperwork for him to go to this colony in a remote town in the mountains. Correct me, mountains of Minas Gerais? Uh-huh. Yeah, so there is mountains in Minas Gerais. So they were there. The parents, they're like, no, Lucien is not coming here anymore. No. But Miriam Vasconcelos, she has a good speech, and he said, well, it's only for a week, it's your son. So they say, okay, but he's not going to be sharing anything with the family here. It was a mansion. So at that time, families used to have a room on the first floor in the back of the house where they put the what?
The servants?
No, not the servants. A room where you put everything that you don't want at home, like to storage things. Like, oh, this chair is good, but we don't want it. Let us put it in the storage room. Let us put it. So we call it San Alejo in Spanish. I don't know. So they decided to open a little space there, put a bed, but that's it. It was a room full of furniture, old things. And they told Lucien, you're welcome to come here, but you don't leave that room in the week you're going to be here. They say, okay, what I'm going to do? Okay. So the day that Lucien was discharged from the psychiatric hospital, Miriam was with him because it occurs that she was discharged too at the same time. What a coincidence, right? So they went together to the family's house, and they are in the living room. Mrs. Angelina or Doña Angelina come. She doesn't touch her son. She's just very cold and take distance emotionally and physically. And she's very clear about the rules. You are welcome to be here in the back room, not even with the servants. No, worse than that. We will feed you for a week. You need to be secluded there. And when it's time for you to go to the colony, you just go, hopefully midnight, so nobody notices. And by the way, Lucien, let me tell you, you are not my son anymore. I reject the day that I hold you in my arms. I reject the day that I give you life. You are a wretch. You are nothing. And I don't love you, and you do deserve my love. So Lucien, that was fragile, he was out of the psychiatric hospital, emotional and physical, Lucien just fainted. And she still looked at her son on the floor, and she dares to say, just stand up. Don't be so dramatic. You don't see that this is a very expensive carpet? The poor Miriam, she was in shock. She was like, what? What? This is real because So Miriam immediately reacts. She just holds Lucien, put him in a chair, called the servants. They are giving him water, but the mother is like in trance. It's not herself. She doesn't want that child. So Lucien goes to his room, and he doesn't have any contact with any of his 12 siblings or his father or his mother. Then it's time for him to go to the leprosy colony that is called Saint Damien, in honor of a saint, a Catholic saint that dedicated his life in the 18th century to heal and to take care of lepers in Polynesia. So he went to the colony of Saint Damien. And he narrates that the very first night in the colony of Saint Damien, they couldn't find really a room for him or a special place for him. So he was put in a very small and dark room with another 6 patients that they were already having the illness in a very advanced stage that nobody could do really anything for them. So only just palliative, how do you say that? Palliative care. But it was the only bed that they couldn't find for him, and he was in need of receiving the medical treatment. So he said, okay, I will go wherever you tell me to go. So he narrates the very first night. It was a very hot and humid night. It wasn't any windows, so no natural ventilation. And he narrates the smell of the flesh decomposing for all these other 6 men, the complaint of his voices, the smell of also of the feces and everything. He thought that he was under underground, and that was the day in which he died. In this state of mind, of desperation and thinking, why I am here, why, if I one of these good desires of becoming a pianist, but not any pianist, a pianist that is going to bring comfort and hope to people through my music, because I was planning to spread the message of Jesus, why I am here. At that moment, his mentor approached and helped him to have a vision, the vision of one of his previous lives. And after he had this vision, he fell asleep. Then Lucien started a journey of 10 years in the colony of Saint Damien. 10 years of treatments, surgeries, and many other painful situations. No single member of his family visited him anymore. He was forgiven by the world. No one remembered him. One of the things that Lucien narrates is when a patient goes to the colony, they change their name because it's like starting a new life. The previous personality or the previous being, whatever they were before, they are not there anymore. They are rich. They are forgiven by the world, forgotten by the world. So he remembered his dear friend Armando, and he said, from now on, I'm going to be Armando in the colony, right? But we are going to continue calling him Lucien so we don't get confused. So Lucien, with time, and with the help of Miriam mailed him the books, the Spirit's Codification. And since Lucien was very artistic, he started reading, he started feeling more the strength, he started feeling that he had a different mission there. And through the years, he started writing poetry, and he ended up writing two books about what is going on in a leprosy colony. But they were so beautiful that with the help of Miriam and some of their friends, he used a pen name. He publishes the books, and he's very successful. By the way, Miriam concludes her work with the other friends of finishing the pavilion, the psychiatric pavilion in the colony. So Lucien started working as a volunteer in the colony, bringing comfort to the brothers and sisters in the same situation. And because he had this personality, very outgoing and very joyful, although it was very painful, so he gained friends among the medical group and the authorities, because by the way, this is the colony is a public colony, it's not private, it's public. So the authorities decide that Lucien is a good element, is such a great person. So they moved him for a room that it was shared with other men, and they gave him a little tiny apartment, just with the simple things, a bed, a table, so he can write by himself without any distraction or interruption, and he can have his studies. And his only company, it was a little cat, a white cat. So the cat was there. That was his family. At the time, Lucien, he needed to undergo his 17th or so surgery. It was about his left toe. But he didn't want to lose his left toe, and he was trying to postpone the surgery because it was going to be an amputation. However, things were very bad, so they decided to do the surgery. And even with regret, he accepted, and he said, okay. So he underwent the surgery, and he is now after the surgery in the recovery room, he needs to spend a couple of days in this common room with other patients. When our next character comes, Marcia or Marcia. So he was there, Lucien, a little bit disheartened because it was after 10 years and still going through this. And Marcia is coming with a group of people that is visiting the patients there, bringing the gifts, some fruit and comfort and company and human contact. Because some of them, they were never embraced or kissed or caressed for another human being. A total lack of warmth and love. So he was there and he wasn't feeling well and he's like, oh, I don't want for anybody to talk to me. I'm like, we know when we are sick, sometimes we don't want it. And all of a sudden, our dear Marcia, she started looking at the different patients and, Lucien Madeiros, it is you? And Lucien was like, oh God. We say in Spanish, tierra trágame. I don't know, like a earth disappear me. And Marcia approached him. He didn't want to talk. And Marcia was, Lucien, I thought you were dead. Your family told us that you were dead. But no, you're alive, you're here. And Lucien was feeling uncomfortable, ashamed, and he was like, yes, Marcia. So they were friends when they went to the same school, elementary and middle and high school. So they knew each other from the past. And he was so embarrassed and feeling ashamed because of his deformities. And he said, Marcia, I appreciate your visit, but you know what? I'm not Lucien anymore. I'm not that pianist. I'm not. I'm Armando here in the colony. So Marcia, with a kind and sweet heart, approached to him very close and said, Lucien, it's okay. You're not the only one who is bearing a cross in life. Let me tell you, I'm here with this group of visitors from a spirit center because it was recommended for me to visit a spirit center. I'm just starting with them. However, during my last 6 years, I have been in and out of a psychiatric hospital. My nerves betray me, and I'm very depressed, and I don't know what to do with my life. So they recommend me to do something good for others. So Lucien, you don't need to be ashamed of anything. We both are sharing a cross. So since that day, they reconnect. And Marcia, she said, I'm going to visit you every week, every Sunday. And she do that, and they start reading, and they start laughing, and they start sharing moments. And both of them, they feel complement to one another. They start feeling this attraction that goes a little bit beyond of a simple friendship. However, one of these Sundays, Marcia and her big eyes came to Lucien, crying, almost in desperation. He said, Lucien, I cannot see you anymore. How come, Marcia? My mother discovered what I'm doing on Sundays. She doesn't want me to come to a leprosy colony. She thinks I'm going to be contaminated and that I'm talking with a dirty guy. She is forbidding me to come here. Lucien, I don't want to abandon you. So Lucien, although with pain in his heart, he was very resilient. And he understood that he didn't need to push the situation any further, to put her in a difficult situation. So he told her, it's okay, Marcia. We have our time. We know we love each other and we respect each other. Don't give a bad moment to your mother. You just do what your mother is telling you. Remember that our suffering is the pathway for a greater happiness. So you just do what you need to do, and I will keep doing what I am doing. And although Marcia didn't want it, she said, okay. Even though 3 or 4 weeks later, it came Marcia's mom to the colony, and she threatened Lucien, and she said, I'm going to denounce you to the authorities because you are talking with my daughter. One more time, 40s. People with Hansen disease, they were forbidden to have contact with other people in the outside world. So it was a crime, actually. So he said, it's okay. I understand. I won't write to you, because the time it was letters, I won't write to your daughter. Just go home and be tranquil. This is the end of our friendship. And the poor Lucien was again disheartened. So he was recovering from the surgery. Oh, that's right, I have this. And his heart was broken. And he didn't know what to do. So he decided, what I did? Oh, yeah. So he decided to write a letter to his old friend Armando. And here there are some excerpts of the letter. My dear friend Armando, you can't describe the emotions. In that moment of my diagnosis, I entered the dark cave of desperation, where one is dominated by hallucination. The subsequent tests and the study of the bacilli unfortunately confirmed, or happily, the ruthless diagnosis. It was the Hansen's disease, the biblical and cursed disease in me. Yes, the consequences are here interned in this spiritual recovery home, together with companions of all madness, repairing with tears and with deep meditations my prolonged suffering. After 10 years of pilgrimage between the psychiatric and leprosy hospitals, and in peace with myself, and working with the expectations of assisting someone from among many brothers and sisters of our redeeming cross. Sincerely, Lucien. And he sent the letter with great expectation. So Armando got the letter. Armando has been working as a Spiritist speaker, and he has been also taking care of some charitable work. When he received the letter, he couldn't believe what happened to his friend, and he truly felt the pain of his friend, and he truly cried. He started crying, and he couldn't sleep that night, thinking, what can I do for my friend? How can I bring comfort to him? And because he couldn't sleep, he decided to reply. He wrote a 3-page letter, including some excerpts from the gospel, and we bring just a few sentences from the letter that Armando wrote to Lucien. Lucien, my brother in faith and dear friend, may in the weight of our redeeming cross we find peace. Blessed is he who believes and simultaneously tests his faith to rescue his turbulent and infamous past. The reading of the Spiritist teachings allow us to visit the bright and noble concepts that with time produce the effect of a shining light that deeply penetrates the spirit. That's why Spiritism is the divine consoler that Jesus promises us. Therefore, your life is vital for other lives. The light in your soul is transformed into a shining sun in the home that you are currently living, and that light is extremely dear and appreciated there. Remember the Spiritist therapy, constant optimism, and firm faith in the Lord, trust in the Lord, fluidic water, and the study of Jesus' lessons. With love, Armando. And when Armando was writing this letter that was pouring the words and the emotion from his heart, once Lucien received the letter, with shaking hands, he opened the letter, and Victor Hugo narrates that it feels like he opened the letter and a bright light came to Lucien, like a passes at a distance. And Victor Hugo narrates the power of words. So even when we send a letter, a card with a good intention, when we pour our heart there, this is going to bring a therapeutic relief to the person who is receiving the letter. From then on, they enter in contact. They start, interchanging letters. Armando tells Lucien, you know what? I'm going to give a talk in a city very close to your colony. Why you don't come? And with Miriam Vasconcelos' help, they decide that they are going to meet in this specific city. Armando that night has an audience of more of 200 people, and Lucien was there. He was granted permission to go there. And Armando decided to give the talk about leprosy. And he was very eloquent. So Lucien also felt the therapy that the good spirits were giving to the whole audience over there. And Armando said, well, this must be happen just for a few people to have the Hansen disease. However, all of us, we are lepers, moral lepers, that we need to work to overcome the errors from our paths. Sometimes our leprosy, it could be a financial situation. It could be a family distress. Our leprosy sometimes is the lack of good relationships or the lack of job. All of us, we are lepers in the world, and we need the healing of the Master Jesus. So everybody was touched in this beautiful talk. After the talk, they went to a common friend's house. They spent the night there, and the following morning, they described this beautiful weather and landscape that is like all year round in Brazil. So they were taking the tea. They were taking the tea, Lucien and Armando. And in a more intimate moment, Lucien confessed to Armando, I say, I want to tell you what was the intention of my letter. I am very happy that we get together, but I need to confess something to you in the intimacy of our friendship. You know that the friendship is the perfect soil for love to grow. So that's why I feel this way with you. And he started narrating the story of Marcia, how she went to the colony, etc., but they start having feelings for one another. However, it wasn't the major difficulty for Lucien. The situation was that he was falling in love with Marcia, but also having this intense fire of passion inside of himself. And he was, but look at me. I'm half man. I don't have anything to offer to her. Just thinking of me touching her is disgusting. That thought is disgusting for me. But this fire inside of me is consuming me. Armando also confessed to him some of his difficulties by being a renewed speaker in Brazil, how he doesn't have a family to support him, how he was deserted for many friends, etc., etc. They interchange words of comfort, and then the following day, they go to the airport and they say their farewells. Before going back, Armando turned to Lucien and said, Lucien, what are you going to do in regards of Marcia? And Lucien said, I'm going to do what I need to do to fulfill my sublime expiation. in other words, to fulfill my reincarnatory plan. So we're going back to the past. We're going to the 15th century and 16th century. This is the vision that Lucien had the very first night he went to the colony. And we have our new characters. 4 of them are well known in history, and these are actually their portraits from that time. The other pictures here are random pictures that we choose to use for this presentation, but actually are not the person that represents. So we have Pope Alexander or Rodrigo Borgia, Cesar Borgia, Lucrecia Borgia, and Alonso de Aragon. Pope Alexander is the father of Caesar and Lucrecia. The 3 of them are from Spain. Their original last name is Borja. However, they moved to Italy, so they changed their name for Borgia. And at that time, church and politics, they worked together. So while the Pope, Alexander, is living in the Vatican, Caesar is the general in charge of the whole army, and he's living in the San Angelo Palace. The Vatican and the San Angelo Palace, they communicate for a corridor underground. So they plan a lot of things together underground. And at the time, interests of politics, becoming rich and everything, didn't have to do anything with family relationships or with love or something like that. So Pope Alexander forced Lucrecia to get married 3 times, only for him to extend his power in Italy. The second marriage of Lucrecia Borgia was Alonso de Aragon. Although the name sounds Spanish, from Spain, he was from Italy, from the noble house of Naples. So the Pope, he has interest in conquering Naples, and by this marriage, it was very convenient that they were in the same family. Although they don't love each other, they have a baby by the name Rodrigo, and they were having their lives together. Caesar, he didn't like Alonso, not at all. Caesar only has eyes for Lucrecia, and we know how's the story, and it's in PBO or somewhere else, right? So we have another characters, real characters at the time. Let us keep in mind, 1492 was the discovery of America. It was financed by the Spain, the king and queen of Spain, and it was Christopher Columbus. So we're talking about that time, okay? So we have Giuliano. Giuliano is the boy of a nobleman in Spain. The nobleman was married with a condesa. But the guy had so many affairs. The fruit of one of these affairs was Giuliano. One she discovers, for some reason, she knew what was her whereabouts of her husband, right? But she gets so mad, she decides that she sent some mercenaries to kill Anna Maria, the name of Giuliano's mom. So Anna Maria fled the region, and it seems like the mercenaries were successful. However, Giuliano, he was educated and raised in the palace as one of the children. He received a very high education, and he's very talented with the harp. Oh, but he's handsome, and he doesn't know anything about love. At that time, they confused love with passion, love with desire, love with possession. So love for a man, it was to possess the woman. Love for a woman, it was allowed the man to possess her. So that here we have him, he loves party, etc., etc. and he is called to the court of Alfonso and Lucrezia to be the second man of Alfonso. They become friends, etc., etc. And then Lucrezia, she has the lady, how do you call the ladies of company? Like other ladies that were part of her court. And we have Gracia. Gracia, she has a lot of grace. She was beautiful. And guess what? Giuliano fall in love with Gracia, or Gracia. Oh, but she's a smart lady, and she say, I'm not going to have any relationship with you because I want power, and I'm in a good position here, so I'm going to go upper. And he was rejected by Gracia. So he gets so mad. And he tried to do a lot of things to get Gracia to possess her. And she's like, no, my dear, you do. However, Alfonso, he noticed that relationship. And he's curious about Gracia. And he started approaching Gracia. And guess what? He wants to possess her. Oh, because she's beautiful, right? So Gracia thinks, okay, this is nice. This is good. He's the dessert of Naples, and I can have the power, the jewelry, and the dresses that I want. Okay, they decide to have a relationship with the result of a pregnancy. Alonso forced her to abort. We're talking about the discovery of America time. It wasn't anything beautiful or anything pleasant. So Gracia died, passed away, when? Because of the abortion. Victor Hugo narrates that Gracia got in despair, she got enraged, she became an obsessor spirit of Alfonso and Giuliano, both of them, right? Well, but Giuliano connected mentally with her. And Giuliano started hating Alfonso because he was the one who caused this situation. Giuliano decided to betray Alfonso. Basically, he put Alfonso in a tray for Caesar to kill him. So, at that moment, Giuliano is in trouble. He doesn't know what to do because he betrayed his lord. So Caesar also likes Giuliano and say, this is a good guy to have near me, because Caesar is absolutely unscrupulous. So he say, okay, Giuliano, you don't worry, come with me, and you're going to be my first man. And they are starting doing all sorts of abuses in different towns and in different situations, all sorts of abuses. At the point that this guy, he cannot go more to those parties in the court because he has so many enemies that Pope Alexander and Caesar decide to send him to a farewell town in Italy and proclaim him the governor of that village, Faenza. So he is going to Faenza. He is around his 25, 28. He goes to Faenza, and in Faenza, there is another character there. In Faenza, there is the Countess Isabella de Lunardi and her daughter Beatrice. Beatrice is really a 15-year-old girl, but this is an old picture of them. And Beatrice, Isabella, she was a widow, and they were living in that time in a feudal organization. So she was managing the finances, all the region of Faenza, but with a lot of charity and love. So everybody was working happily. Nobody was suffering of famine. And she always went to the town and tried to provide with resources for the family. She was well loved, and also she was secluded in her house. She didn't interact with people. She avoided parties, gossiping, and she was very religious. And her religious or spirit guide incarnate, it was brother Carmine. And they have a relationship of a father and a daughter. Also, in the Countess' home, it is Tommaso. Tommaso is the administrator of the home, with the horses, with the servants. And Tommaso is a very rude guy, but is very faithful, or royal, excuse me, is very royal to Isabella. One day, Isabella and Beatrice, they were in their carriage doing a errand, and Giuliano, with all his pride, he was in his very beautiful horse, just very boring because life in Faenza is not the same like in Rome. So he's like, oh, all these farmers here, I'm very bored, there is no party, what I'm going to do? And all of a sudden he looks at the eyes of Isabella and he's like, whoa. And he falls in love. So he decides that he is going to know who is that lady, very noble, etc. And he wants to possess her. And he gets upset. He found a reason to leave because he was kind of going down, but he found a reason to leave. And he started meditating how to go. He decided to present himself to the Countess one day with all the formality of the time. For some reason, the Countess didn't like him, but at the same time, she felt like an attraction, like a magnet to him. It was a very awkward encounter, and the Countess told him, you know what, don't come back here. She felt deep in her heart that something bad was about to happen. Plus, Giuliano wasn't a saint, and she was, somehow. So she didn't like the energy of this guy. But, however, she was like, oh, that young man is calling my attention. To make the story short, because time is calling us, Giuliano creates a plan to kidnap Isabella and Beatrice. He hired 2 mercenaries, certainly kidnapped them, secluded in a basement. The 2 women were in distress. Brother Carmine, Tommaso organized the people in the town looking for them. They feel like something bad is going to happen to them. And by the 3rd night, Giuliano goes to this basement thinking that the women were already weak, emotionally and physically speaking, and he tried to possess Isabella. However, Isabella, she has an encounter with her husband. Her husband came as a spirit to comfort her and to give her strength. And he said to her, you need to drink this chalice, in order for you to be successful in life. Meaning, something serious is going to happen and you just need to deal with it. And she was like, okay, no, okay, but Victor Hugo narrates beautiful words. Anyways, when Giuliano goes to the basement, the Countess, although she was physically weak, she was spiritually strong. When Giuliano is forcing with her, he noticed that she has a pendant with a virgin in the pendant, and all of a sudden, he has a flashback and he remembers his mother when was caressing him, and he looked at the chain and the pendant, and he somehow is trying to make sense because Beatrice is in panic, screaming, and he's forcing with the woman trying to possess her, right? And all of a sudden he's very confused, and there he's having a sword also just to force the woman, and he's very confused, and he says, if you are not mine, Isabella, you are of nobody. And then Isabella look at him, and all of a sudden, without knowing why, she screams, son. And all of a sudden he say, mother, but he already put the sword in her stomach. The poor Beatrice fainted. She's all nerves. And when he looked at the dead body of the woman and focusing that pendant, he felt she was her mother. The mother that the father of Giuliano couldn't kill. She escaped. So Giuliano, he entered in desperation, so he killed himself. Also, he was under the influence of Gracia, that wasn't happy with Giuliano having eyes for Isabella. Remember, Gracia was dead or as a spirit, so he commits suicide. So this is basically the story in the 15th century. And we are going to see who is who, if you allow us to be here a little bit more, to discover the mystery. Who is who? Who is who? Who is Giuliano? We know who is Giuliano. Lucien. Of course. Then we have Armando. Armando wasn't in that story, but Armando was one of the priests that worked with Cardinal Richelieu and helped Cardinal Richelieu to start the War of the Terror Years in France. Then we have Miriam. Who is Miriam? Who is Miriam? Huh? Isabella. Isabella. Then Marcia. Who's Marcia?
The girl.
The girl. Yes, it's Gracia, Grace. And then we have the mother and father of Lucien, Tommaso, and Beatrice. So what happened with Beatrice, she never forgave Giuliano for taking her mother's life. And she always felt rejection. And Tommaso also never forgave Giuliano because he was the royal worker. Now the end of the story is that unfortunately Marcia, she unfortunately after Lucien came back from the Armando's presentation, in which, by the way, Lucien played the piano by the inspiration of the good spirits and he could move his fingers, he comes back to the colony and he finds out that Marcia passed away in the most tragic situation, because one day she was at home and the mother introduced to her to an old and unpleasant and very iffy gentleman, and the mother say, "Here is your future husband." And the poor Marcia is, "I'm not going to marry anybody." And this gentleman was abusive, just slap her in the face, etc., etc., and you are going to be mine. Like probably he was still living in the 15th century. So Marcia decided to jump from a window. So her dates increase. So we see there are so many centuries or trying to recover from this jumping, and then here she has a lot of revenge and hatred. It takes centuries for her to go back as a Marcia with a lot of psychiatric situations, but however she couldn't be so strong enough to overcome. So what happened with Lucien? By the actions of Giuliano, these negative actions, abusing people in all sorts of forms, unscrupulous, vengeful, etc., he was imprinting in his spirit these negative actions that with time it deteriorated his spirit, and after so many centuries of trying to be born and with natural abortions, he was going back to the spiritual world in some sort of cleaning his spirit. However, by the incarnation in the 20th century in the 40s, he brought that genetic mark that was imprinted in his physical body as the Hansen disease. Lucien, after knowing the news of Marcia, he wasn't feeling well. One more time, he went to visit his mother. His mother, in an act of charity, decided to prepare a panettone, a cake for him, a given to him. And he said, Lucien, when you get to the colony, eat this cake for me. Don't share the cake. Don't share it with anybody. Just for you. Okay, mother. And he went back to the colony. He was there trying, the time of the coffee. He's going to serve the panettone or the cake. And he was called to attend an emergency in the psychiatric hospital. When he came back, he found his white cat dead. The cat ate the cake. Mrs. Angelica thought that it was an act of charity to finish with the life and the suffering of her son. Weeks after, the heart of Luciano was weak, and Luciano's heart stopped and went to the spirit realm in peace and joy. Mrs. Angelica, due to her actions, she lost her sense. She went to a psychiatric hospital for 6 months. And with the help of Miriam, visiting her in a daily basis, and also to the Dr. Euclides, Dr. Madeiros, Miriam started talking to them about Spiritism. After 6 months, Mrs. Angelica became better, and both parents decided to attend the Spirit Center and start learning about it. But the most important part is, it doesn't matter if it's a Spiritist teaching or Christian or Catholic, the most important part is they understood that through charity and serving others, they start healing themselves. So at the end, the Sublime Expiation is no other thing than the way, the ticket for us to repay, to fix, and to give back to those that we hurt and damaged in previous lives. It wasn't until Giuliano was ready 4 centuries after, or 5 centuries after, that he underwent the situation. And to conclude, we're going to show some of the highlight sentences. There are only 4 or 5 that we would like to share with you from Victor Hugo. No one can escape from himself. Whoever performs actions becomes a slave of its consequences. Delaying good is a way of slowing down or obstructing progress, disrupting life. Charity is a light on the road, blessing the shadows and transforming them into clarity. Hate is a toxic that corrodes the container that contains it. When it is retained, it destroys. When it is spilled, it poisons. No debt is paid beyond the limits of the debit incurred. Nobody is obliged to carry a burden higher than their own strength, and we are only constrained to suffer the pain that corrects, disciplines, and liberates. None of us is a victim of the circumstances. All of us, we are the consequences of our own actions. And it depends of us if we decide to suffer even more because of the constraining circumstances, or to accept, like Luciano, he accepted his expiation and he actually succeeded. So Jesus told us that blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. We hope that this story brought you the comfort that brought to us when we read 2 times the book, and it's worth it to read it 3 or more times. Thank you. It's for me? Or I don't know. I don't know if there is questions, comments.
That was very beautiful story. I didn't know about this story because Victor Hugo, he had another book that I was very young. I think it was called Redemption. Also is in this same,
Line.
way. But I was wondering when you said very quickly that one night when he was in a very deep desperation, during the sleep he had some vision from his
For
for
that
for
life.
that life.
So he understood.
So yeah, because I was thinking this sublime with expiation, because usually expiation is very hard, but in his case I see some attenuation. I was wondering if it could be even worse than it was, because in some way uh, he had this dream. He was allowed to revisit, to have this help during the dream so he could understand and not be rebellious, not be upset. And also I saw he was surrounded, although the mother's character was horrible, but he was to compensate that mother with so many great people like Miriam and Marcia and this Armando. It was 3 people to nullify the bad mother or whatever, So I was wondering how much of this spiritism, him being in that situation already, having a good, how to say, intention. He had a good intention to use his talent to spread the spiritism that he deeply loved and want to follow. If that was how the divinity used in order to support him throughout this, or difficult times.
I think I have my. You are right, Jasko. We brought you here the highlights of the book because the book goes deeper in each character. So one of the things that the Victor Hugo narrates is once Giuliano, what happened with Giuliano after he killed himself. He had so many intents of coming to planet Earth, and by natural abortion he's not. After so many intents, he's allowed to come to planet Earth, and he starts this process of repairing and cleansing, and he started being in contact with, at the time, it was the Catholic Church. So he started knowing about Jesus' messages, etc., etc. So by the so many incarnations, by the preparation in the spirit realm, he came in as a Lucien with a strong background. Other than that, he won't be able. As at the last sentence that we showed, none of us, we are going to have a burden that is higher or heavy than our own strength. So we are coming prepared to deal with the situations and the circumstances that we need to deal. Basically, the main message for Victor Hugo is we need to surrender to that. Not in desperation, but with humility, with acceptance, and thinking that this is temporary and that we're going to overcome that and much better things are coming. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Alba. Yeah, just to kind of go back to this month of October, and I want to say it because to me it's a perfect exemplification of what we have started with the first talk this month of October. Paula and Kirsten talking about the conscious being, Julio Carvalho talking about embryology in the light of Spiritism. We worked last week on Thought Live talking about illness and death, right? And you giving this beautiful example that Victor Hugo brings to us, it's just again, I'm amazed and I'm really thankful for us to have this example here. And since you read the book twice, I think you already touched on this idea of resignation. And what I got, and it's mainly my comment, and if you can confirm, is this active resignation, because we give the connotation to resignation of being passive, or just being don't do anything, just you just don't move, you just go with the flow. But what I gather from Lucien is that he was very active, even though he suffered, through his condition. He was very active. He never stopped helping, and he got right from the start that he was supposed to go and help. Right, he was supposed to go and rescue something of the past that he had. So it's a great exemplification of what we have been studying, of the reasons why we reincarnate on Earth and how we have to deal with these difficulties. Thank God, in a way, it's not the leprosy of the skin, but the other leprosies that we see in life. So thank you.
That's right, Leo. Bless you. No, my thought flow. No, it's okay. It's okay. That basically what you say is that's correct. One of the things is he himself, in his personality, he developed this character of he wanted to serve anyways as a pianist. He wasn't all blind of being famous or because he won this international contest. He wanted to bring his skills to serve others. So with that attitude, it was not easy, but at least the process was a little bit easier for him to accept his situation and to move forward. Also, the vision, the night of the vision is very interesting. Not all of us, we are having that. He was prepared to have the vision. And the two mercenaries that Giuliano hired to kidnap Isabella and Beatrice, the two mercenaries are actually in that colony as a part. And he knew. That's why he said, I'm with the brothers and sisters that we are all the same. We commit the same crimes and we are paying here. And it's my responsibility to help them, because he was the one to hire them. Of course, the guys were completely, but he was the one who hired them for that specific act. Yeah, thank you. Any other comment or question, Rafaelito?
No, just that was an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that will inspire a lot of people for years to come who listen to that in the English language, because it's not yet in English. Is there any other part in the book that you didn't have time to mention during your talk that was really impactful, or any other? Because I know it was basically a highlight of a very intense novel. Was there anything else, either from Victor Hugo or from a mentor, or any other aspect of the book that was very moving for you or insightful?
Actually, Armando's life. It's practically a whole chapter of Armando and his ecological features. And we did some research, and we find out this character is still between us. And this is, I don't have the confirmation, I'm talking as Albita, but I'm pretty sure by researching in the Brazilian Spiritist Federation, etc., Armando is Divaldo Franco. Armando is Divaldo Franco. So it is so beautiful to see how in his first years, in the years of his human youth, he was also tormented by a lot of doubts or situations that Victor Hugo describes there. And how he knew by a vision that he was part of the court of Cardinal Richelieu. And promote the War of the 30 Years in France that brought so much desperation and pain. So that is impactful. And also, Armando, naturally, he has a rejection. He's afraid of the leprosy because in previous incarnations, he underwent that situation. So when he finds out that Lucien is suffering of leprosy, the first reaction is pain, and the second one is, I'm not feel like I'm going to visit him in the colony. And he actually did. And in the colony, through Miriam Vasconcelos and some other mediums, there is a fantastic encounter with the spirit of Jesus Gonçalves. Jesus Gonçalves, who was the pioneer in Brazil of founding these colonies for the lepers. So that's also an amazing chapter. And actually knowing that Divaldo is here with us, right? It's like, oh my God. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Albita, this is very interesting. When you start talk about leprosy, the first thought coming to my mind was Divaldo, when he told us once that his mentor asked him to go to the leprosy to visit people, and he was very reluctant to go. And she said to him, "Are you going there to visit them, or you going there to stay there?" Yes, that was the first thing come to my mind.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was beautiful.
Thank you, Genetica. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much again. Thank you, Alba.